Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, dear listener, dear compatriots. Thank you very much for being with us and welcome once again to this program, the part of Rebirth, which aim to enrich and awaken political awareness and citizen of the largest number of Cameroonians. This day is special for our political party, for our team, and for all Cameroonians people of change, because our Sunday program is going to be exclusively in English. We thank political friends and partners of Great Britain for this initiative, which is quite a good example of coordination and symbiosis between CIM French member and CIM member from Divisional Federation, from UK Divisional Federation. I am a Francophone Cameroonian, and I'm going to present this talk in English. And this is the Cameroon template that we are looking for. And of course, we fully hope that this program will produce so many others collaboration inside the CRM party and outside with civil society organizations. So our daily topic is about social, political unrest and insecurity and the urgency of citizen mobilization for political change in Cameroon. That's the subject that our friend coming from UK proposed to us. Dear viewers and followers, special day, special program. We are really glad and honored to have with us today 4 important members of CIM UK Divisional Federation on this crucial topic. I shall remind that we have already operated different topics around our daily main subject. Then please allow me to introduce those 4 compatriots to you. First of all, we have Mr. Claude Cheta, seasoned British politician and currently the mayor of Peacehaven in England. Good evening, Mr. Cheta.
Hello, Olivier. Good evening, and it's my pleasure to be with you tonight.
Yes. Thank you very much. We are very glad to have you today.
Thank you.
Well, just a few words.
Yes, just to say that I'm very happy to be with you tonight, and a political actor, and somebody who knows Cameroon, and also somebody who has been living in the UK for some time. I've come to the conclusion that Cameroon has the opportunity to move forward and to change, but we need to understand our problem. What is the one thing that is missing in the Cameroonian context that can allow that change? We need to understand that. Okay. And to also ask the question, what is the one thing that if you bring it to Cameroon will really make the difference? This is what I will talk about.
Okay, that's good. You have already introduced your subject, but I will do it once again. Let me continue with the next important members of UK that I talk about. The second is Mr. Jean-Michel Ngwona, excuse me, please. Jean-Michel Ngwona, Polytechnic engineer, like me, of course, with experience in core engineering, telecom, and finance. You're welcome, sir.
Hello, Olivier. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. So thank you for the invitation you extended my direction to be able to come to your platform and contribute. Thank you so much.
Thanks. And Dr. Séraphin Kamdem, PhD from SOAS, University of London, in social scientist and university academic based in London.
Thank you, Olivier.
Hello, Séraphin. How are you doing?
Thank you, Olivier. It's a pleasure to be here. And again, it will be a very fruitful exchange. And I'm very proud that we have put this together and we hope to be speaking from our hearts, from our experiences about the topic that you have so well introduced. So it's a pleasure. I'm happy to have my brothers and friends with whom I've been together for so many years. The mayor of Peace Haven, Jean-Michel, who is a brilliant engineer, and to have you again here. So it's a great pleasure, and we'll really do a great job today, I am sure.
Okay, I trust that. I trust that. So the four participant is Mr. Yves Tudi, Human Resources Executive, working in with an NHS trust in England.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Olivier. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. It's a wonderful occasion. Could you just give me 1 minute just to extend warm greetings to all our comrades here in the UK who are part of the Renaissance movement, and those who yearn for change in Cameroon. I would also like to extend my greetings to brothers and sisters back home in Cameroon, especially those who are detained in several prisons throughout the country, especially those who are in the New Bell prison in Douala. So my warm greetings to them all. We are in heart with you guys, and obviously what we're doing here tonight is just part of extending that work that we're doing to cause profound change in our country. So thank you very much, Olivier.
Thank you too, Eve. Thank you. Special thank to this remind about our political friends which are in prison in Cameroon. Thank you very much. As we mentioned before, our daily program is going to be quite different than usual. And then we will be glad to listen to those four important members of UK Federation. And they will give us each one 4 individual presentation linked to the main subject during the first 40 minutes. Then we will take another round of about 40 minutes again to share on main question directly linked to the previous presentations. So we will directly start with the first presentation with Mr. Cheta. Then let me introduce him again. So Mr. Cheta is the mayor of Peacehaven in England. Then he will talk to us about common responsibility, citizen mobilization, and the fight for political change. Please, Mr. Cheta, you can go.
Well, thank you very much again, Olivier. I used to think when I was younger and when I was living in Cameroon that I was made to believe that Africa was the poorest continent. We were said the third world. We were told that we lacked resources and we needed help. We were also told that we needed human resources. We did not have competencies. We didn't have skills. We were also made to believe that we did not have strong people to lead us. But after observing and after analyzing, what I see now is that Africa and the Cameroon is very rich. It's a very rich country. So to tell me that Cameroon is poor, it's not true. Cameroon has fantastic human resources, people, the engineers, the doctors, the intellectuals. Cameroon has all that. I will also say Cameroon has great leaders, great thinkers. If we look at the political landscape, even within our party, we have great people. But then we are still struggling. We are still far away from where we want to be. So I ask myself, what is the problem? What is missing? And I've come to the conclusion that the one thing missing in Cameroon right now is not the divide between Bamileke and Anglophone and non-Bamileke, North and South. That is not the divide. That is untrue. The biggest problem in Cameroon is not the divide between Francophone and Anglophone. Again, that is not true. The biggest problem is the lack of trust at all levels. And I will say that Cameroon is like in a broken relationship. We have observed some marriages, we have observed some families, and we have observed even some organizations. We'll say those are dysfunctional organization, dysfunctional family, dysfunctional organization. Let's take an example. Even in a dysfunctional family, the husband does not trust the wife, and the wife does not trust the husband. So even when the wife may arrange a very beautiful meal to offer or to show friendship, the husband may ask, "Oh, what is your hidden agenda? Maybe do you want to kill me?" So we don't trust each other. That is exactly what is happening in Cameroon. We don't trust each other. We don't trust our leaders to do the right thing. And between political leaders, there is not enough trust to have a common objective, to have a win-win situation. It's either a situation where you win, I lose, or I don't know exactly where you are leading me to. So when you make a deal, I am not sure that you are going to get your part of the deal. And then between members, even of the same community, even within the same party, most of the time, we still lack the trust to be able to let somebody lead us without having to spend a lot of time in unnecessary debate. So our biggest problem in Cameroon, if we want to mobilize, is to rebuild trust. What do we need to do to rebuild that trust? First is we need some healing. In some country like Rwanda, or like Burundi, or like South Africa, after a very long struggle, they have gone through a process of reconciliation. I think I remember when they had like committee peace and reconciliation, that was actually to heal the wounds of the past, to rebuild trust, to make people believe in each other, because those relationships were broken. There are three things that must be done in Cameroon. And then first is to be clear that we want a better Cameroon. We want to set the rules that are objective, that are clear for everyone. That is the first thing, to agree on the rule by which we want to go. The second thing is through our behavior. Even when people agree on a set of rules, they don't behave according to those rules. That is, again, the biggest problem. To behave, not just to talk about a problem, not just to promise. I remember when I was very young, we used to talk about rigueur et moralisation. That was promise. And like Lafontaine said, the promise it's a commitment from the person, but if you believe in it, it's your problem. So we need to make clear statements and make people to believe that we are not just making statements, but that we are going to behave in a way that respects the statement that we have made. That is the second thing. To be clear on the direction, to behave in the way that we can make people confident that we are going to do this. And then in the practice, how can we build confidence? Practice, let's say financial management. We'll say that our problem is not lack of money. There is a lot of money even within the diaspora. But unless you show people that you can manage that money properly, people will not contribute. That is how we build trust, by showing transparency, by showing accountability, and by showing integrity in the way we manage everything. Those are the three things that are missing. And if you have those three things, we will build more trust. To be clear on the rules of the book, how are we going to be behaving? What are the rules? And make sure that the rules apply to everyone. Our behavior should be able to inspire trust. People do not need to be directed. People need to be inspired to do what they have to do. They don't need to be led by the stick. They need to be inspired by good example. This is what we need. People need to know that when we promise, we are going to deliver. When I give my money for something, it's going to be used for the good cause, and then you are accountable to me. Not just talk about something, but practice the talk. This is what we need to do in Cameroon. And if something has been done, say, thank you, it has been done, to recognize and celebrate what is done well. And then if something has not been done, to be able to learn from our mistake. I'm not saying we are all perfect. I'm not saying we don't make mistakes. But when there is high trust, we can learn from our mistake. When I do something wrong, I apologize, and then I correct my mistake.
Last 2 minutes. Last 2 minutes. Yes, go on. Last 2 minutes.
Well, for the last 2 minutes, I want to summarize. I want to say that Cameroon is not a poor country in terms of resources, even financial resources, even natural resources. We are a very rich country. We are not a poor country in terms of people. We have big intellectual, we have big resources, human resources. Nobody can deny that. We even have great leaders. What is missing in Cameroon is trust. Trust between political leaders and people who are supposed to be inspired by them. Lack of trust between people, even between political parties. No deal can be done if you don't have trust, if you don't trust each other. To achieve a better country, we need to start building trust. Establish a clear rule for everyone, change our behavior, our mindset, and then practice the talk. We don't just talk about rigor and moralization. We need to practice. We just don't say, oh, we want a better management of the country in terms of financial management. We need to show it by clear transparency, clear accountability in the way we manage our financial resources at all levels. If we do that, if we do well, we celebrate. If we make mistake, we apologize, we correct, and we move on.
Yes.
This is what we need. To mobilize means that we build trust between people, we build trust between the people and the leaders, and the leader will be the people who inspire us. Who make us believe that we can be there, and we will be there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I won't summarize again, but you went to give us a sort of philosophical vision of the political fight. Am I right of what you gave to us?
Yes, if you want to say that, yes, that is the vision. We lack vision, we lack inspiration, we lack a clear way forward.
Okay.
Before you drive, you need to know the destination.
Okay,
this is what we need.
Thank you. So let's go on with the second presentation given by Dr. Séraphin Kamdem about cultural diversity, common destiny, and the need for political change. Please, Dr. Séraphin Kamdem.
Thank you, Olivier. Thank you very much for the opportunity to go over this topic. Again, I will make sure I focus on the key point that you've introduced in my theme for today, which is cultural diversity, common destiny, and the need for political change. Now, I will start by going on what I call a conceptual clarification, and this is important. People may have their own understanding of a number of concepts, but when we are making a point like is the case now, it is important that there are clarification of what we mean. So cultural diversity in the case of Cameroon has to do with who we are. The history of our country is rooted in our diversity. And what I call cultural diversity is the ethno-linguistic wealth that Cameroonian peoples have acquired right many centuries before any contact with the West. This is important. That's who we are. For me, it's an aspect of the reality of modern Cameroon that we have cultural diversity. So that's the starting point. Once we start on that basis, We acknowledge that's what defines us as a country, as a nation. The principle, therefore, that we need to abide by in terms of building our future is to never forget the roots of what we are and who we are. Cameroon is a country with more than 250 ethno-linguistic community who, and this is extremely important for me to get to my second point, have always been living in peace and some harmony, because it was about complementary interactions. It was about trade, traveling around. So we have the history of living in peace and harmony within and throughout our cultural diversity in the recent centuries. What happened through the colonial era was the advent of what we call national identity. National identity came as we were coming together to build our nation. Mm-hmm. Nation building is a good process. It came out of the necessity to come together in a continent that was changing. The debate is not so much about what colonization did or didn't do. The debate is about how Cameroonian communities came together. It may be very simplistic for some, and I would question even the validity of such an approach, to see the advent of Cameroon through what we call the political agenda. It is actually not true. There was already a sense of community that was what we call trans-ethnic. That is, that went beyond various ethnicities. And that, again, is why it is important that we get to the second aspect of my contribution today, which is what I call common destiny. Common destiny is the other aspect of the reality of Cameroon today. We have a common destiny. It is not an option. It is not a choice. And I want to be clear on what that means. It means Cameroon today, in a world that is globalizing at a very, very fast speed, is bound to build its destiny together. There is no historical possibility not to move forward together. And that togetherness, the spirit of the nation of Cameroon, as communities who have come together to be what and who we are today, is why the principle of common destiny is not an intellectual debate. No, it is the way Cameroon is evolving. And this panel here, right now, is the living proof of the principle of common destiny. Our awareness, our belief, and our certainty of our common denominator being our beloved country, Cameroon, is what I'm talking about. And you can then expand how we feel here, right now on this panel, to all the other communities in Cameroon. Looking at how we have lived together, moving to various corners of this beautiful triangle that defines who we are today, and settling there. I don't want to go into the detail of inter-ethnic marriages. People who have settled in all corners of Cameroon and build their life. And I'm very aware that there are a number of issues. And that's why I want to get to the third point, which is the need for political change to preserve and protect our common destiny and our cultural diversity. So you need to be very clear what I'm trying to get across here. Cultural diversity is a key element that defines who we are. Cameroon is one of the most diverse countries in the whole world, and that's a richness. It's a fantastic thing, having so many languages. That's a very basic thing that the average Cameroonian, for example, speaks 3 to 4 languages, 5. Naturally, it means intellectually, we have this capacity of developing multilingual skills. Most Cameroonians have these multiple layers to our identity, where we are born in one area of Cameroon, we grew in another area, we share this cultural wealth that defines who we are, even more so in the diaspora. Now, once we define the importance of our common destiny, the importance for us to look at political change comes now because there is a political failure. There is a political failure in the way politics have been done in Cameroon, because politicians in Cameroon, in the current regime, and that's something that we need to face as Cameroonians, have not protected our cultural diversity. They have not been fully aware of how to mediate and how to operate our common destiny. We are now living in a country where division has become a tool to rule the country, where tribalism has become a national policy of the regime in place to make sure that Cameroonians feel divided, where we do have no awareness of what do we do about our common destiny. How do we face the future in a world that is globalizing at such a speed if we do not build a country that is united in what brings us together, which is the fact that we are a nation that has been brought up together to move forward. Cameroonians are one people today in terms of who we are. We just need to find the means, and that's why the politicians must do their job to propose a vision of our society which allows us to protect our cultural diversity and in the vision of this common destiny. So the need for political change in Cameroon must not be seen as something superficial. It's not just about giving power to a new group, or it cannot be reduced to partisan politics. Why? Because the depth of our issues calls for us to understand that we must change the political system so that it represents the diversity of who we are. We must organize our society. The political management of our country must allow us and the children that we have and that we will be having to find a country in which they feel that they are recognized. We cannot build a system in which people will start from the basis of being different and divided. And that's the whole idea of what I want to contribute here. And I'm giving my closing point here in the next 1 minute, that cultural diversity is a key element in what we are today as Cameroonians. That's a fact. It's not a subject of a debate, and that would be a waste of time to debate that. I'm not talking of the North, the South. That's why Cameroon is called Africa in miniature. It's because of our diversity. The common destiny is also a basic aspect of our reality today. Cameroon wants to stand as Cameroon. Cameroon wants to be part of the emerging countries, not just in Africa, but in the world. That's a fact. And we are there fighting and working for that. Therefore, political change must be deep enough to make sure we are building a country that will protect and preserve our cultural diversity, because we need a different way of doing politics in Cameroon so that we are protected and we survive in the world today, because Cameroon has so much potential to become a great nation. Thank you. I will stop here so that we come back to some of the points I've presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that quite precise presentation. If I could say just a few words to summarize, you talked to us about the role of the politician to preserve our ethnical diversity. Let us go to the third presentation with Mr. Yves Chudi, talking about financial mobilization for the revolution for change in Cameroon. Please, Yves.
Yes, thank you again, Olivier. It's a pleasure once more just to come here and share with you my thoughts on the need for us to mobilize, but not just mobilizing any resources, but most specifically financial resources in supporting this change in our country. Again, as I said before, the topic which I'm covering is more to do with financial mobilization for the revolution of our country, not just what some may see as political change. It is part of the whole jigsaw, but we're looking at it in a much more broader sense. It's the transformation of our country. So there will be a need for social changes as well as the political. And so I'm just picking from where my brother Seraphim left, in the sense that we are a dynamic and a very diverse society, and it's always been like that for many years. So we come at this crossroads where our country is going through another transition, and which again we are trying to move away from what used to be, again, the colonial system, which has passed on the baton, as it were, to the new system, which is now ruling the country. And so the struggle that we have now is to completely move away. So we really don't need to make any more cosmetic changes. We need to completely transform our society. And so the resources which are needed for that transformation are just as much as they would be material, but we also need the finances to be part of that game. And so my focus here tonight will just be on the role of the diaspora in that fight and how much more we can support. It's true that one of the key and the context for this is that the world has become a much more globalized. And as we all know, with globalization, things change very quickly. And so there is a real momentum here for us to be able to really impact on that change if we were to mobilize financially in a way that we will contribute when it's most needed to that transformation back home. So why we need to look into really getting involved. So clearly our brothers back home who are involved on the grass, as it were, on the grassroots as it were, are certainly paying a price for this change. And so if we can, the most we can actually do is actually to support those who are on the ground in trying to, working to impact that change back home. And so we know, as I said in my opening speech, that one of the endearing successes of Western society is their ability to organize. And by that, I mean, if you look at how the West is organized, is their ability to move from individualism to starting to, organize. And, you will see big companies here, the likes of Peugeot, you name it, Toyota, in all of these society. That's what's actually allowed them to mark that change, that sweeping change, which we see today in being an established society which would develop. But the difficulty is that whereas in the 70s and the 80s, we're actually on that sort of road towards modernizing our country, what it's been left with in the past 20 years, 30 years or so, is that obviously all the basic infrastructures have been completely uprooted. So we need to start building from scratch. So we might get to a position where we might get a political change, but if that political change does not follow with transformation in terms of how we organize our society, our infrastructure, and all the rest, it will not take long before we look and we ask ourselves, are we actually on the path of a revolution here? Or are we just changing, for some new furnitures, but actually we haven't changed the house? So if we're just putting another plaster, it won't really do the job. So the change that we're talking here, as I mentioned, it's one which would involve politics, but also the economics, and certainly the social. And if we consider diaspora and we look back in history, there's clearly that, diaspora have always contributed wherever they've been. And, Lord Councillor Claude Cheta here is just testament that we as a diaspora are actually contributing to politics here in the UK. And it's not just for us trying to, get involved in transnational politics, whereby we here are trying to influence what is going on back home, but we here as a diaspora are also involved in the politics of Britain. And that is the reality, that is a fact. So clearly, if we consider what others have done, and if we consider the Jewish, certainly what they represent in this world today, and you would realize that the diaspora has actually been much more active in changing and transforming the Jewish society and making it the power that it is today. If we consider other diaspora, I mean, you consider the Chinese, in the US and Canada who were involved in the 1911 revolution in China, they were the ones who were the driving force. The same situation with the Czech and the Slovaks, during the 1918 independence of Czechoslovakia, which became an independent state in the 1918. It was the driving force was the diaspora. And most recently for us here, much more closer to us in Britain, Irish nationalism, recently in the 80s and the 90s, the ones who were much more behind that, the driving force again, were the nationalist Irish who were in the US. So clearly, diaspora have played a massive and an important role in actually supporting sweeping change, political and much more than political, social and economic change in many of those countries. So there is a call for us here, part of this Cameroon diaspora, to seriously engage in supporting that transformation back home. And how do we go about it? Clearly, there is a lot that we can actually do. And there is a lot that we are actually also doing in terms of supporting the Renaissance movement. For some of us who have been involved in that movement, is about how do we organize in a much more strategic way, as I mentioned before. There have been possibilities for us to engage in some of those schemes to try and raise funds, raise necessary resources, but much more than just raising resources, organizing ourselves through some sort of structure, which then becomes a driving force for development back home. But beyond developing what goes back home, but we also can organize in terms of being able to become a force that will be used as a lobbying group to lobby here for political change in Cameroon. And again, if you look back in history, that's what some other countries have done. So we are at that crossroad where we really need to think, we need trust back home, as what my first presenter said. We need trust to get society back together. We also need to remember that we are one people. Things have happened over the years, but we are still one people. And it's not just by thinking we would focus on one part of the country and think that, because at some point there was a change, a decision, and those who were left, because they then carry that cultural background, believe that they now become something which is totally different. That is not how we see it. We are still one people. We just so culturally divided. But ultimately, we also need to organize. And this is a wonderful opportunity for us here to organize through the Renaissance and through some of the projects that are going on here, so that we can, raise those resources and get ourselves organized to support that change which is happening back home. So I'll leave you there. I'm almost at my time now, but if further, I would add to what I've just said. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you too. I just want to remind once again just a few important words that you gave to us about the fact that the diaspora can be a force of lobbying to impulse the change in the background. So let us go to the last presentation with Jean-Michel Ngwona. Youth mobilization, use of technologies, and the fight for political change.
Thank you so much, Olivier. Yes, absolutely. Jean-Michel Ngwona. I'd like to say I am engineer and I'm also entrepreneur. So technically, I'm really privileged to be here once again to actually be on a panel with us really elites of Cameroon origin on this panel. And I'm also grateful that they've mapped the road for me. So it's absolutely perfect. I think we've heard from Claude, we've heard from Séraphin and Yves. So it's my pleasure really to come in because they've made the job easy for me. And it's usually said in Cameroon that the youth is the fighting spear of the nation, or in French, they usually normally say that la jeunesse est le fer de lance de la nation. Now, I've always heard that when I was young, and as I grew up, I started scratching my head. Well, I've lost a few hair on my head. I was just wondering, what sort of war was the country trying to actually present to the youth? And if the youth was that weapon that was going to win wars, why is the youth not really properly looked after? So my expose today, as I say, it's going to be galloping on the fantastic talks by the colleagues that came before me. But most importantly, I want to first frame what we call youth. Because youth, I used to hear that it was from 7 to 77. And when I look at the pyramid of age of Cameroon, for example, I'm just wondering, because the core of ages, that age where you're really, really active and extremely active and productive, probably between 20 and about 55 to 60, because retirement is actually probably 55 or 60 or something like that. Life expectancy about 55. So it's extremely important to really kind of readjust those numbers. But that said, I'm not going to go into statistics right now, but it was worth mentioning that who are really the part, what's the part of the population that we really need to look after? It's clear, and I agree with those who used to say that the youth is the part that we really needed to look after. Now, I have been scratching my head because I've been hearing news. Cameroon youth dying, whether it's in Cameroon or across the Saharan desert, or in the Mediterranean, or in Amazonian jungle, or in Arabia, it's simply extraordinary. And I'm wondering what's happening to the local powers, what's happening to the thinking tanks that are supposed to look after this youth. I'm just wondering. And really, I want to say that between 20 years old and 60 years old, we have almost 45% of Cameroon population. Now, my question is, are these youth being mobilized to leapfrog Cameroon in the next stage of progress on the planet? Because I wouldn't want us to think just about Cameroon. We should be thinking about Africa. We should be thinking about the whole planet. We should be thinking about how do we use the moon to improve civilization? How do we get to Mars to know how to actually explore the universe, rather than just bickering, fighting, dilly-dallying about little topics in Cameroon? Stealing here, stealing there, backbiting. It's simply extraordinary. I think that the mindset should be a crank up. And this is extraordinary because the country has pushed the sharp skills to actually go abroad and develop other areas of the planet. It is important that the planet be developed, but it would be good if youth can actually resolve local problems and then extrapolate to planetarian problems. A lot of youth, Cameroonian youth, find themselves in the middle of nowhere, resolving problems that they did not create, which is fantastic. But I think it's about time that we actually make a stop on the picture and then try to resolve local problems. Now, as entrepreneur, I've actually been most of the time focused on problems that needs to be resolved. And I understand that the youth in Cameroon, if you have basically to think of Cameroon as a global country, and then say youth would go maybe from, we're talking about active youth that have got a voice, we go from 18 years old up to extinction, but literally, or when they actually go away from this planet, you probably would like to think that Cameroon chose to actually remove that chunk from 18 years old to 21 years old. They do not count. And what I'm going to be talking about today is actually about the youth. I've already introduced the pyramid of age. You can actually check it for yourself. It talks by itself, literally. And it's extremely important to understand that we need to optimize or to maximize that chunk that are still very active and that can help the country. I really want to approach the situation now in terms of how do we operate the change? How do we operate the change in terms of youth? I would like to focus on the section between 20 years old and 50 years old, because that is roughly 45% of the population. Now, how will that percentage technically operate political change? That's what I'm going to be talking about. how will the use of technology, which technology and what use of technology can be used for that revolution that Eve was talking about earlier on? Because yes, at this moment in time, it's not about change anymore. It's about a whole revolution. Things have got to change to the core, because cosmetic paint is not going to work. It's not going to work. And I want really to focus on the youth. Now, I'm probably going to start with the technology for change. Now, what technology can be used for change? There is a big chunk of youth that have got no voice, and they need to have their role in the change or in the revolution. I'm talking about those probably from 16 years old up to 21 years old. And they constitute about 30% of the population. And these guys need to have their role in it. What am I talking about? I'm talking about voting. I'm talking in terms of voting, because some are excluded, they need to have their own role. Of course, those who can vote should be able to do so when the rules are right, which is one of the reasons why the CRM is out there fighting for rules to be fair before we start votes. Now, as far as my topic is concerned, I probably will not dive deep into that. I'm going to be talking about how can they impact the vote. There is a chunk that can vote. Those should, by all means, go and vote. But those who cannot vote, they should actually do what we call get on the vote, get out those who can vote. Meaning the young ones should be politically involved by helping those who can vote to actively do that. They need to use social media. These are how they can actually operate that change. And basically, because they need to use operating the change, we mean obviously using social media, meaning being smart in those technologies. They should be able to organize themselves, not just those who cannot vote, but those who can vote as well, should be able to reach out and influence officials, create networks, create groups. And very important, we should actually be able also to go out there and touch. They should be able to go out there and touch groups or register into organizations that can literally help towards the change, the political change. We're talking about local issues, because if some different area doesn't have clean water, someone may say it is not a political issue, but at the end of the day, it's impacting populations. These are local solutions. These are local problems that need solution, if not at local, but also at governmental level. So the youth should be able to impact on those at those levels. I'm talking about the vote. Those who can vote should. Those who cannot vote should facilitate. I'm talking about reaching and influencing officials. I'm talking about youths getting aware of the political thing, whether they are still at school or already at university, be able to get together, network, and influence organizations. We're talking about using social media to be able to do it. We know elections around the world have been seriously influenced by youth using social media. And it's extremely important to understand that it is a spear in the war of bringing justice and fairness into voting or into politics. Now, in normal time, it should be a way of life for the youth to organize themselves. Talking about charities, talking about groups that actually impact populations, awakening the population. It should be the work of the youth. Now, it's extremely important to understand that there is a lot of technology into how to operate that change. And that technology is not just for some groups of youth somewhere. The decision should be taken actually at the highest level, which means that the government should have a policy into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because these are the cornerstones of the future of the country. I see Cameroon as a country where people should be proud to say it's made in Cameroon. Most of us are out there in the world impacting other economies and lining ourselves behind the made in the UK, made in the US, made in France. But we are giving our competences to that made in the UK, maybe proudly so. But we just need to be able to contribute to the made in Cameroon. And it is the youth that's going to do it. The 60-something years old or the 70-something years old is focused in resting, and fairly so. For those who've worked hard, they should be resting. So they should be passing the baton to the 20-something, to the 50-something, to actually go out there and sell the label "Made in Cameroon." Why not? So there need to be a serious political, political lead into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Why is that the best of math, of science, technology are out there and literally going in to help other countries?
Last minute.
Thank you so much. And basically, it's important to, as I said, 3 main points. The first point was really the use of technology. How do we use technology? I've named them: social media, personal development. Personal development is one of the most important parts, because if we don't have leaders, we're probably going nowhere. But really, to round up, I'd like to say there is a 3-level responsibilities here. Number 1 is our uncles and aunties in charge. They should make sure that this revolution happens. And if they don't, we should actually nudge them in the right direction. Number 2, our youth. They should take in charge parts of this revolution. I'm talking about mastering science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Know the statistics, know the technology, prepare for the label "Made in Cameroon." Number 3, the diaspora. It's already been covered. I'm not going to come back to it. So it's extremely important to understand that with the individual responsibilities, we should abide by personal excellence. Network for purpose, voice it out, voice the problems out, and try to fix it. So on that note, I've really finished at this point. I hope I haven't overtaken my own time here. Thank you so much.
We get you well. I think all the viewers get where your point. So thank you all, you for that very beautiful presentation about our the change that we are expecting for our Cameroon. So, dear viewers, in fact, through those 4 presentations that we had, our friend, our political friend, gave us 4 ways to operate the change in Cameroon. First, rebuild trust between each other. Second, political organization. Build a political organization which protect and improve positively our diversity. And third, improve the political fight by financial mobilization. And last, operate the change by science and technology with the youth. So that's maybe the 4 great words that we can remind for our daily presentation. So let's go directly to the first round of the program with the question. So the principle is that I have already prepared, so like I said, 1 question for each presentation. So for each one of you, and the others, you have the right, of course, to give just a few words on the question that I will ask. So to the first presentation, my question is, I'm talking to Claude, of course. The first question, my first question is, where is the most important point to exploit in what or not? What is the most important point to exploit in order to bring a real national consciousness in Cameroon? The principle is that I have already prepared, so like I say, 1. Oh. You get my question?
Yes, I get your question, Olivier. Can I?
Yes, because we have a return, a voice return, so I didn't understand what's happened, but you can go on.
I think we have problem at 2 levels. The leadership issue and then the interaction between people. I think for our leaders, we need to allow the leaders to spend more time thinking about the future of the country rather than separating the fight between the children in the family. The father, let's say when we take the party like CRM, our leaders should spend more time thinking about the direction of the party rather than separating the fight internally. Between ourselves, we should spend more time in more productive relation. We need to heal our relationship. What I've seen so far is a lot of time spent in energy draining and joyless interactions. When I see the quality of what we discussed on WhatsApp, for example, sometimes I wonder if actually we are not using our energy rather than to fight the dictatorship in Cameroon, we're using the energy to fight among ourselves. We spend a lot of time gathering evidence on the weakness or the mistakes of our political friends. This is what we spend a lot of time doing. We hide important information from other people, and when information is available, we don't make it available or transparent. So this is the sign that there is we have a lot of misunderstanding, and because there is a lot of trust, and as a consequence, we misuse our energy that should normally be used for our revolution. So we are very rich, but our richness is not used to achieve a common purpose.
Thanks. Is there someone who wants to add something to Claude answers?
You mean from us or?
Yeah. For example, Yves, do you want to add something?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yes, as Claude just said, yes, there is clearly the need for us to and it meets what I said before. We really need to be organized in the sense of organization. As I said, a wonderful way as to how we've seen Western civilizations and dominate the world. It's the ability to organize, and what that means is having leadership playing the role that the leadership should be playing, having people on the ground playing the role that they should be playing on the ground. And what we see some of the time is that disparity where on the one hand the leadership is doing their best to try and set the direction and tell us in what direction we're heading and organizing what should be happening, but rather than focusing on what should be happening most of the time, there is that in fighting some of the time, which kind of takes us away from the focus of what should be driving us forward as a people, as people struggling for change and really working towards that change to happen. So clearly, we really need to focus more of our energy. It doesn't mean that in organization people don't have differences. Yes, differences do occur, but it's how you go about solving those differences. And clearly, which probably takes me to the next stage, which is, does that probably call into question how the structure, should I say, the infrastructure on what we are built, is it fit for purpose? Maybe that's some aspects that we should also look at. Maybe the policies that we have, the procedures that we follow, maybe they're not very fit for purpose, they're not fit for purpose, or perhaps they don't operate very well. And we need to look to operationalize those policies better. But beyond any of that, and that is, trying to get policies, strong policies and institutions to work for us. But us as human beings, I think we need that level of humility and integrity, really to allow us to really focus and be prepared to be sacrificial. And this is what we don't see very much. And so we need to understand, as Professor Kamto has said it along many times, it's not written on my forehead that I'll be the next president of Cameroon. But certainly I'm fighting for us to see a new Cameroon tomorrow, which we and our children will be able to enjoy if we get the chance to be there. But that is what our focus should be. It should be working to seeing, to hoping, and absolutely just adding to trust. I think another thing which I'd like to add, Lord Councillor, if you may allow me to, is trust, but most importantly, hope. Because people are working now to see what they will get. It feels so from time to time. The focus should be more on, we will work and we'll hope it will be better. Whoever is there tomorrow to enjoy it, but that will be the focus.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you too. So
Olivier, if I can add one small point.
Just 1 minute, please.
Less than 1 minute. Dr. Camden said we were very rich in terms of diversity, people.
Yeah.
I want our leader to go on holiday, not in Switzerland, but to go to Garwa, to go to Bafoussam, to go to... We are very rich. I want our school to value our local languages. I want our engineer to be motivated, to be committed to going back to Cameroon to invest. I've seen so many people who have advised to, oh, do you want to go back to Cameroon? Say, no, I'm not sure because I am not confident that things will go well. That is what I want, to value our own riches.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Claude. So let me jump to the second question with Séraphin. Dr. Séraphin Camden. Please, Séraphin, what could be the best anchorage point to build a national consciousness in terms of cultural aspect?
Oh, thank you, Olivier, for the question. First of all, it will not be easy to have one single sort of anchor point, as you say, but it's good to have a vision of what are the key elements. First of all, we need to build national identity around our realities. That's something, we have the colonial heritage that we just took, wholesale, and then we are struggling with it. We are not making sense. One of the things that I like to talk about in my various talks all over the world is, what languages do Cameroonians speak? We may go and say we are bilingual, French and English. That's true. There's no question. We are here as living proofs that we are. But what about the other languages that we speak in Cameroon? Can we take into account our national culture in terms of building something along the lines of one of the elements that defines who we are? And you see, the other element is what I call the cultural indicators of good policies. This is something that I will come back to hopefully in some other discussions. But when we have policies in the constitutions, in our constitution, in the way our country is run, where there is not what we call accountability in relation to our cultural identity, there is a problem. So to answer your question, we must design policies, politicians must design policies that clearly show that we are taking into account our cultural heritage. If a policy, even if it is the law, has as its main aim to divide Cameroonians, then we must have a problem with that, because you cannot build a country if you are looking at the differences and making them the elements for people to be separated. And this is extremely important. We are not talking of a country somewhere. We are not talking of ourselves. One of the things that is very important, and I want to go back to that aspect, is Cameroonians are very proud of their cultural heritage, their history, traditions. People from all corners, they like the various dishes that we have. We like our history. We like football, which brings us together. We like the beauty of all our cities. Nobody, we like the beaches in the south and in the littoral area and in the southwest. We are very, very attached to the thing that define our identity. So we must have policies, and politicians must show clearly, not as a demagogical debate, but in terms of the application of togetherness, that we as a country are preserving and protecting our culture. So we need to have cultural policies that are patriotic, that bring Cameroonians together, that protect and preserve the diversity. So the action is political, but the measure must be that our country, cultural heritage, linguistic heritage, traditional heritages are protected and preserved. So that's something that we need to all work towards as much as possible.
Thank you for that answer. Maybe someone want to add something to that question? Claude or Jean-Michel? No?
Well, if I needed to add something onto that, I think his answer was absolutely perfect as far as I'm concerned. If I needed to add something, I would say that our culture should be explicitly celebrated. It's extremely important. And this includes languages, cultural practices, technology, local technology, because when some of the violent colonizers came in, they destroyed literally some or part of full cultures, and this has to be rebuilt with a lot of care. So it should be celebrated. That's what I can actually add onto that answer.
Okay, thank you. You're right. You're right on your answer.
And
so, yes.
Sorry, I was just going to add one small thing. We all remember that recently, when President Biya visited the agricultural summit in France a few months ago, he mentioned that current government had been trying to assimilate the Anglophone into the Francophone system, and unfortunately that hadn't worked. And so just by going from what he had said, you can understand why all government policies hadn't really integrated the idea of bilingualism. That is actually a serious thing to consider, because if only they had worked in having policies which would allow for the implementation of bilingualism in Cameroon, and it still certainly surprises, and not just me, but many people, that up to now we are quite happy, and you see it written everywhere, Cameroon is bilingual. But are Cameroonians bilingual? That is just an aspect of what Dr. Camden just touched. So before we even move into really using that whole diversity, we should just consider what we've said we would do. And if at least we could try and implement that, we will not be in the position where we are now, whereby we have part of our cultural heritage, those from what we call NOSO, who claim that, yes, there was that past which have made them. And certainly what has made it even worse is that the government had then tried to completely wipe that away. So that is something that we really need to go back, first of all, and try and consider. So, and up to now, what they call all of these, what they call, I can't remember what it is, an institute of or commission of bilingualism, which they create here and there, it still does not solve the problem of making the country a bilingual country. They really need to look at what are the policies and why do we make it work, and then beyond that, roll out what Dr. Camden just presented. So that will make more sense. Thank you.
Thank you. But I will, I'm sorry, but I will ask just a question that I haven't prepared, looking to what all the different ideas that we went to hear. So the question is, do we have to integrate that our colonial heritage coming from the two exogenous languages that we received? I'm talking about French and English. Do those two languages are already part of our endogenous culture? Yes or no?
Olivier, may I? And see how we can move forward. That means we need to recognize our past in terms of our tradition. Before the colonial master came, we had our culture, our tradition, and our languages. And then we have a past. We have a history with France and Great Britain. That is part of our history as well. So we cannot wipe out the past. We need to see how we can integrate that in our cultural heritage. We become richer by embracing the other person. I think we are too afraid of difference. We are too afraid of something new or different. In the contrary, we should consider building our Cameroonian personality as integrating our tradition, our original culture, adding our new technology, science. We cannot say we don't want to embrace science. We don't want to embrace anything that is good. Anything that is good, you can integrate to our culture and move forward, but don't take what is bad in the other culture. Just take what is good in the culture and add to our own cultural identity. Don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid of diversity. Embrace diversity. Take it as an opportunity to grow.
Thank you. I want to have the point of view of Séraphin on that question, because I think maybe is the most dedicated guest tonight to answer that question.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know you. Yeah, I will jump in now that you are asking that. I want to give an example and a question, Olivier. When a Douala, somebody born in Nubel, moves to Gawa, lives there, speaks Fulfulde currently, and then speak the other local language, and then he has a child, then the child, do you think the child will speak Fulfulde more than Douala, or what do you think from the experience that we know in Cameroon over the last 60 years? I can give you the answer. The child will be a perfect speaker of Fulfulde because he's born in Garwa, and until they tell you that actually their father came from Douala, you will not know. Cultural diversity is a dynamic process. We are the living proof. When the Cameroonian moved to France because their father went there for study, they speak French, they still speak whichever culture, maybe they are born in Cameroon like some of us. This is the Cameroon that we are building today. This is not the project that some are seeing, but it is the reality of who we are. And that's why we need to be very, very clear when we talk of cultural diversity. It's an inclusive cultural diversity. We must build on what we have, and it is absolutely normal that we even create new elements to integrate that identity. And I know why I'm telling you this, because many politicians, not the ones in power today, have been thinking about how to build an element of our linguistic identity which will take into account the reality of Cameroon in its multilingualism. This is very important. So it's not just about recognizing our roots. It's not about recognizing our past, which is absolutely unavoidable. It's about building a vision of Cameroon that will take into account all of our diversity. And it is possible to do that. So that's why I'm saying the current regime in Cameroon is refusing to acknowledge the reality of Cameroon. We have to go back and talk about a head of state who has shamed all of us. I want to say it by saying, I am the best student of Mitterrand, a leader of a sovereign nation who can be proud that he cannot develop his own vision for his own country is problematic because it's a mental health issue. And I want to clarify that the whole point of being a leader is to be able to develop an identity and a vision for your people and who you are. So the pride that somebody could go and say publicly that they are the best student of somebody from a different, instead of looking at who we are as Cameroonian, is problematic. So I'm saying that it is possible for us not only to acknowledge other culture that we have been in touch, but to develop a better identity of who we are. And that's possible. So there is the possibility to even bring together some of our languages, traditional languages, historical language, and develop even a new national language that could actually mark a new aspect into our evolution so that we can be in a better harmony, as long as the project is aiming at bringing Cameroonians together as part of our journey into the world today. So it is possible that we integrate everything, that we find a balance, and that we forge ahead with our own vision of who we are, instead of forgetting who we are and trying to be so disrespectful and do a disservice to the identity of Cameroon. And allow me, Olivier, because your question is crucial. Allow me to be clear that cultural diversity is non-negotiable. It's a reality.
It's a reality, of course.
Denial about the cultural diversity of Cameroon are simply wrong, okay? So nobody is going to negotiate that. I don't think you would. I don't think I would. I don't think anybody on this panel is who. We are diverse. Is who we are. The common destiny is also non-negotiable. And that's what I will go back to towards the end when you give me a minute to round up. The question, therefore, is not to go and debate what I call the basic file of what Cameroon is today. The question is, what do politicians, what do we as members in a political party, what are we doing about building that better future for ourselves? So that's the key issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. How do I qualify it? Thank you for that. I say beautiful, beautiful answer. And the next question is for Jean-Michel Gona. So my question is, where is the question? Do you think that the social media technologies could be a key factor on urging youth to register on electoral list? You have already answered this question on your presentation, but the following of the question is, and is there a dedicated web application to be involved in that issue?
Right. The question is, thank you so much for that particular question. I'm probably going to start by saying we have all the technology. I mean, Cameroon produces a good amount of engineers. I'm one of them. It produces a good amount of engineers in order to be able to handle those technologies, and probably more. And for sure, those engineers are outside in the world having an impact, if not on elections, on real technology for the planet. Can we have an impact on an election locally? Absolutely. The magic of the present is that everybody has access to those applications. Let's take just a couple of examples, or just a few. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. These are applications that can actually, if well used, people organize and mobilize, can educate and inform themselves so that the truth and good actions be actually put forward in order to have good outcomes for the youth and for the country as a whole, or for Africa, for that matter. It's important to understand that there are organizations that are polling on people's behavior, whether it is voting behavior or thinking behavior or discussion behavior, to basically guide or steer in the wrong, or unfortunately in the right, or unfortunately in the wrong direction. So yes, to your question, absolutely. We have the skills, and people have applications that can be used to influence in the right direction. We try to keep really here non-violent and peaceful. The technology exists that can be used to steer people in the right direction, to get out and give the right group of people responsibilities in order to guide our country, or guide Cameroon, or Africa as a whole, or the world for that matter, in the next centuries, next decades, and the next centuries. So I don't know if I've covered the question, but that's basically the first answer I will probably give to it.
Okay, thanks. We still have just around 5 minutes less to the end of our program, so that I would just ask the last question to Eva, who talk about financial mobilization. So my question is, do we absolutely need to drive the different political organization, of course, CRM party, to the professionalization process?
Can you just clarify that? Didn't quite, in what sense?
In what sense?
Yes.
Or in just in the simple sense, do we need just like us in CRM party? Do we need to be professional to improve our political fight?
Oh, right. Thank you. Yeah, that makes a bit more sense. Yeah. So this is not a question of the CRM, first of all.
Yes, of course.
It's not a question of.
I didn't want to close the question to the.
Absolutely. It's not a question of CRM. So we're talking here as Cameroonian diasporas. We are within the diaspora. So it doesn't matter what political board you are. It doesn't matter whether you are a professional or not. My point here is more in terms of learning from the others and looking at what we represent. There's no question, as I've mentioned before, we represent a force to reckon with. Just in terms of, and I'll give you just rough figures here, in terms of what diaspora in the world, so the annual global remit for all diaspora in the world in 2015 was about $600 billion US dollars globally. Now, if you break that in terms of Cameroon, foreign aid in 2018 in Cameroon was around 750 million. Okay, more than half of that, roughly about 400 million, were remittances from Cameroon diaspora. Okay, so that represents massive investment power.
Yeah.
But the truth is, how is that money used? Can we actually canalize that money in a way that is used strategically in major development programs? Now, clearly, we know, and I did an expose a little while ago where I presented a little bit more on diaspora. So, and Cameroon is a typical situation where the country itself doesn't have a very good relationship with its diaspora, as you know. There are some countries which have rather better relationship with their diaspora, but unfortunately, the current Cameroon government doesn't have a very good relationship with the diaspora. And the reasons of how people actually got to leave their country, there's a level of resentment, unhappiness, and even how they treated here when they try to reconnect with their mother country. And clearly, for those reasons, you can understand why. However, if you also consider Cameroon right now and you look at social services and social security, it's almost non-existent because the diaspora almost carries social security in Cameroon. We owe every month send money home to look after our parents. So the government feel no need to actually put any resources to support, social services or social security. So clearly, we have a massive impact in how the country functions. But it's how we leverage all of those resources. And this is where my call comes in, that if only as a people we could get better organized, starting from CRM as a movement. If the CRM was really much more organized in terms of how it raises revenues here and using the power that the diaspora represent, that is a source of major development project back home, and certainly which one way or another would force the hands of the government. But that's just one aspect of it. We also have to consider, as I mentioned before, public diplomacy, lobbying group. How well are we organized here to be involved in how we get involved in the decision? Just like, so many other countries, I mean, you consider the Jewish, you consider the Indians, you consider, the Iranians, many other diasporans here who actually have political leverage groups which lobby for change in their country. How well are we established here in terms of really having strong groups which are well known within the countries that we reside in? Consider France. Do we have a strong organization in France that actually lobby to support, which could actually get a voice at the French Parliament to come and talk about a very hot topic about Cameroon? Do we get those opportunities? And that's where we really should be leveraging all of those efforts. So that's part of where the diaspora comes in. And as I mentioned before, the support, our real impact on the ground will be mostly at 3 levels. So we look at how we will influence political change in Cameroon through, how we power will change hand. Does it go through a proper democratic process, or do we get what we got last time and what the government has been trying to do, another grey? What we call in English gentleman's agreement? Do we move to that kind of scenario, or do we actually get a fair power transition where power actually goes to people who've been voted in by their own people? And it's only through that mechanism that you actually see those who've been voted in actually work for the good of their people, for the good of the country. Because so far what we're seeing, it's French representatives working for us and being there to serve French interests. So that's how it feels, And so that is the one thing that's the first thing that we need to see. The other thing that we need to see is on the ground in terms of development projects. All of this I mentioned before, the infrastructure on what the country is built, is it really functioning these days? Almost difficult to say. It is almost inexistent. And how much can we influence that? But we're doing it now, but in a much more individualistic way. So we all support our families.
That's right, yeah.
What we're saying. But we're not working as a power to actually generate a lot of funds, which will actually develop a serious project, which could actually force us to say, this is what the diaspora is giving. We think we need to be represented, even through the government or the system which is in place now, because we would have forced them to do so. But if we carry on the way we work, in each of us working at their level, doing what they do for themselves or their family, so clearly we're not really supporting that revolution. We may be making a lot of noise, but we need to start thinking more strategically. How do we actually work to pull resources together so that it will impact much more? And the third level, which I mentioned before, is the social level. How are we influencing behaviors and attitudes back home? How do we work to transform, be it through the education system, how people behave? Because clearly when you look at the social situation back home now with absolute immorality, you ask sometimes questions, where's everything gone? We've recently heard of this phenomenon of microbe in Douala, which we've not seen back in our days, but it is becoming reality in Cameroon these days. So clearly just going that, yes, there needs to be a CRM involvement, but we need to look beyond CRM. Is it just professionals? No, it's about who believes I come from, I'm part of that diaspora, and I want to be involved in that revolution in my country. So clearly that's where I would kind of work much more into.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, you four. Thank you very much for being with us today for this very, very beautiful program, for this very rich program in terms of ideas, in terms of statement, in terms of engagement, in terms of involvement for the change in our country. So we don't have enough time to give just a few minutes for each one of you to have just we say it in French, le mot de la fin. So you will excuse myself to give le mot de la fin. So I will give it in English, of course, and it will be very simple. I just want to say, vive le Cameroon, and vive le Cameroon. Thank you to be with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to be with us tonight, and good evening for all. And vive le Cameroon one more time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vive le
Thank you.
Cameroon.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Vive le Cameroon.
Long live Cameroon. Long live Cameroon.
Thank you.
Cameroon.
Des vallées, des boulevards, au plateau de la Damawa, devant vous tous au divin majestueux, le char des dieux. Écoute cette terre qui gronde, son espérance profonde, c'est le souffle de la renaissance du Cameroun. Les sources de Nanga, les torrents de la Sanaga, le ravine, le seigneurie par les flots du Vouri. souffle de la renaissance du Cameroun. Sur les manèques Bouba, sur les crêtes de Reboba, marque ça qui nous caresse, Picoussi d'allégresse. Ces armatans qui chantent, ces mots sont triomphantes, c'est le souffle de la renaissance du Cameroun. Éclaire nos cœurs de lion, c'est le souffle de la renaissance du Cameroun. De Kousseri à Batouri, de Bakassi à Kérossi, unis par le précieux ruban des noces de Fumba. Des offres tout amour, la nuit précède le jour, sur les sillons de la renaissance du Cameroun. Et sœurs ensemble, pays des indomptables, sur les sillons de la renaissance du Cameroun. Frères de sang ensemble, prenons le vivre ensemble, sur les sillons de la renaissance du Cameroun. Terre de mes ancêtres, que j'aime de tout mon être, je m'engage sur les sillons de ta renaissance. Afrique en miniature, pour ta progéniture, je m'engage sur les sillons de ta renaissance, sur les sillons de la renaissance du Cameroun. Je m'engage sur les sillons de ta renaissance.